Welcome to Orbicle Times Podcast, and hello to everyone, whatever part of the globe you're from or happen to reside in. My name is Kelly Jo, and here we'll provide armchair conversations gathered from interviews and research reviews to explore the seen, the unseen, and the in-between of the supernatural paranormal phenomena, with topics that circle around Spirit Orbs, NDEs, OBEs, UFOs, time slips, mystical moments, higher consciousness, and more. I hope that this cast will be our meeting place and judge-free zone where we can explore, learn, and grow through the telling of. This cast will be launched on a monthly basis or a bi-weekly schedule whenever I'm able to make contact with those in the know for their telling of. Speaking of those in the know and the telling of, have you had mystical moments or other supernatural paranormal experiences? Care to share on this cast? Then consider stepping into the light with your telling of, or send in your monologue for me to read on this podcast. Simply email orbicletimespodcast@gmail.com for a chance to contribute to this cast.
So can I come back here if I go back there? And the voice says, yes, you have the choice. It's up to you. But it's your time. Welcome home. Welcome, but you have the choice. And I say, I can come back to this bliss. And the voice says, yes, you come back to this bliss. And I say, well, then I choose to live my life. And the voice says, you won't live your life, and throws me out.
In this 12th episode of Orbicle Times, guest Peter Panagore joins me for part 1 of his telling of his March 1980 NDE on what should have been a day trip to the Lower Weeping Wall for ice climbing, located along the Ice Fields Parkway in northern Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada. I can hear Paul Simon now singing, "I'd rather be an ice axe than a hammer." Noteworthy, Peter is a two-timer of the NDE kind. Some of his other mystical experiences include, but are not limited to, OBEs, one when he was young, and another time while hiking. He has also seen the light in more ways than one, from a lightning strike to light energy. He's even had a close encounter of the semi-truck kind. And speaking of close encounters, I think he may have had a scared straight moment, my words, not his, when he and fellow camp counselors had a UFO night sighting riding adventure. Well, there wasn't enough time for Peter to touch on many of those worthy notes in part 1 of 2. However, you can always read or listen to his book, Heaven is Beautiful, How Dying Taught Me That Death Was Just the Beginning, which is a memoir about his ice climbing adventure and his near-death experience. On that note, and without further ado, let's get on with this interview. And a warm welcome to you, sir. Thanks for
Kelly Jo.
Thanks, Peter. You know, I know you have so many projects on the go, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I know you have a busy schedule, so thank you for making space for me and your telling of, and I guess your NDE for starts.
Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you being here. Now, just before we start, can you clarify the difference between a pastor and a reverend?
A reverend is a person with a Master's of Divinity from an accredited university. It's a 3-year degree. If you don't have that degree, you can't be titled reverend.
Okay. So then, have you ever been called Pastor Pete then, I guess?
Oh, Pastor Pete, Padre Pete, and a lot of other things that rhyme, that start with P.
Okay. So, Peter, if you'd like to begin with either starting at the day of your NDE, or if you wish, you can take us back to your decision not to return home to Boston for March break, but instead go to Canada to play in the snow and ice. But I leave that up to you, sir.
Well, how about if I give a little tiny bit of background and then dive into the story?
Sounds great.
So I was an American student at the University of Massachusetts outside of Boston looking for adventure. And so I went on a national student exchange to Montana State University in Bozeman. south of Banff, some distance. And I wanted to be away from my family. My sister had run away when I was a kid, but from our point of view, she vanished, and it left a long, lingering scar in our family that was still alive by the time I was in college. And so I wanted to get away. And so I did. I went to Montana backpacking. So the National Ski Patrol there at Bridger Bowl, and climbed all these different mountain ranges and just having a great time. Come spring break, I didn't want to go back to Boston. So I looked for an adventure. And I found a fella who was going up to British Columbia and Alberta for a 10-day snow caving, backcountry skiing trip into Mount Assiniboine, and then a one-day ice climb on the lower Weeping Wall. And I'd been working with rope climbing for a number of years. Like I said, climbed a lot of mountains, but I'd never ice climbed before. And as a Boy Scout, I'd done a lot of winter camping. So all of that was within my skill set. We got to the climb that morning on the last day of our trip, having spent 8 days or so, a couple of days for driving, 8 days or so, 7 days or so out in the wilderness, getting to know each other and understanding each other's skills at a deeper level and trusting each other with our lives. So on the morning of our climb, we parked. The mountain is called Cirrus Mountain, like the cloud. It's right on the parkway. And the Saskatchewan River is running right by, and so that provided an audible backdrop for most of the day. We were the last team to arrive at the climb that day. There were other teams already on the ice. And Tim, who had just finished his certification as a lead ice climber, had chosen this climb for its ease of access and its spectacular, world-renowned beauty and accessibility. I guess those are the reasons. So we began our climb, and I made a mistake before we even began our climb. I chose to climb with a hammer and an axe. You need 2 axes, but I didn't have 2 axes. I had a hammer and an axe, and a hammer is significantly shorter. And although you can climb with it, but you can put it in the ice and hang on it like you can with an axe. With the axe, you have a wider swing of the axe, so it plants up a foot higher than your hand. The hammer is much shorter, so it's on every motion that I planted my hammer, I was 6 or 8 inches shorter than everyone else who was using 2 axes for my climb. And I could never rest on the hammer. I had to grip the hammer the whole time, unlike an axe that you can set it in the ice and then relax and let the strap hold you. So I knew that I was going to have trouble. Tim knew that I was going to have trouble, but we both decided we could do this. So we began our ascent, the last team up that day. And when we were halfway up, we knew that we were already headed toward serious trouble, because the first team that had begun hour or so before us was descending. So as we neared the top of the climb, fear became increased. And by the time we reached the top, the sun was setting and all the other teams were leaving. And we began our long, traumatic night. I can stop right there if people would prefer me to jump to the Near Death Experienc and fill in by saying that the night was extraordinarily long and difficult. Fear was the greatest amount I'd ever felt in my life. I reached this place inside myself where survival was all that I don't want to say thought of, because it was way deeper than thinking. Instinctually pursued. Frostbite and hypothermia continued to advance through the night. The temperature dropped about 30 degrees as soon as the sun went down. We had innumerable troubles as we tried to fight our way off the cliff. We knew that we were going to die. This was what we came to the conclusion of as soon as we reached the top, as the sun went down and the stars came out. And we decided that if we were going to die, we were going to die trying to get off the mountain. And that's what we did. We kept trying all night long to get off the mountain. All sorts of traumas and terrors. and continuing advances of hypothermia, where you lose your reasoning capacity and your coordination, and it's difficult to speak and to move, and every action takes thoughtfulness. I had to think about my fingers. My lips were freezing. My eyes were freezing. It is dark, and we are alone on this cliff with hundreds of feet to fall if we make a slip and a mistake. And we traversed and repelled and traversed and repelled. And at the bottom of the second rappel, as we fought our way and this hypothermia continued to advance, we clipped into the mountain for the first time, sometime with middle of the midnight morning, sometime after midnight, 2 in the morning, I don't really know, but we clipped into the mountain and we were on the straps and we were safe finally from fall. But all night long, every step we took consumed our energy. Every time we used our voices, it consumed our energy. We had no extra food. We had no extra water. This was a day climb. I was dressed in clothing from the 1970s. So I was wearing wool. This was before the advancement of technology and climbing in clothing. And so we were dressed like everybody else, but it was, by today's standards, inadequate. And it was a hot, sweaty climb. And so our wool was wet, and all night long, as our wet wool conserved some of our heat to our bodies, but it always leaks heat. So by the time we reached this last ledge where we were clipped in with this harness to and a safety strap to the mountain, our hypothermia was very advanced. We had been driving ourselves forward with this single-minded pursuit. And with this single-minded pursuit of survival, neither of us lost our head through the night, but with this single-minded pursuit of survival, I plumbed this great depth inside of me of willful action that gave me a capacity for drive. I had this inner drive that was originating in this animal nature of my stem of my brain, but also with the will of my action. And so this intuition of this drive and my awareness of my situation and concentration on what I needed to do to be efficient with the energy. Every action I took had to be calculated so that I didn't waste any energy, because I was up against the temperature and the time and my own energy limits. And by the time we reached this last landing, we were in the state of advanced hypothermia. My feet were like blocks of ice. I had frostbite on every extremity. My fingers were blistering. My nose was frostbitten. My mind was confused. My energy was down. And Tim was to my left, and I was to his right, and he was clipped into the mountain, as was I. And as I took the rope and dropped my mittens, I had ragwool mittens on with leather chaps covered with mink oil.
Okay.
And I dropped my mittens on the ledge on which I was standing in order to work the rope with concentration. The moon was up, so I could see the line. So there was enough light to see by, and I, with great concentration, took the one end of the rope and tied it to my harness, and then removed the rope from the carabiners. Did I do that in order? Yes, because they were carabiners. So I unclipped the rope from the 2 carabiners in a figure 8, and I took the other end of the line, and I tossed it out around the corner in order to pull the rope down toward me. And as soon as I pulled the rope down toward me, within inches, it jammed in some rock up above that I couldn't see. And the stronger I pulled the line, the tighter the wedge of the rope and the rock became. And so now it's sometime before dawn. It's dark, it's cold. My feet are frozen. The rope is stuck. I can't reascend to free it. I can't flip. I could flip the line. You know, you make a wave form in a line or a hose in your yard, and only the line was laying on the corner of the mountain, and I couldn't send that wave around the corner because the rope was touching, and so there was no way for me to even try to unjam the rope. We couldn't ascend back up because it was 150 foot drop from where we were. I couldn't trust the rope. So as I stood there, and Tim and I had been minimally speaking all night long, and both of us keeping our level heads, I told him what the situation was. And we discussed, knowing that our choices were life and death. We talked about me untying the rope, but my hands were frozen, and so in fire and cold feels like fire. So my feet, my fingers feel like they're on touching hot coals, and I can hardly move them with my great thought. And we decided that if I were able to untie the knot around my waist that I had tied to my harness with the rope, and if I didn't drop the rope, then maybe Tim could reach it and hold it, but then it would be untied from both of us, and either one of us could drop it, and then we would really be done. So keeping the rope attached to us was this essential survival. And what that meant was that Tim couldn't help me pull the rope. It was entirely up to me. And the tighter I pulled it, the more I pulled on the rope, the tighter the wedge became. And it became clear then that there was no way out of this, that this is where I was going to die because I couldn't escape before the cold got me. And as I had this thought, this peace came over me, and I accepted my situation, and my drive went away. And I thought of my family and my mom and my dad and my sister who was missing and my other parts of my family. And I had all of this regret, and I felt this piece of acceptance, but this despair at the loss that they were going to suffer because of my choices and my mistakes. They had wanted me to come back to Boston. I said, no, I'm going off in the mountains. I'm going to be fine. And here I am. And as I thought these thoughts, I got hot. I felt all of the blood rush from my extremities, from my feet and my legs and my arms into my core. And I remember thinking that I didn't need my feet or my hands. I could live without them. And really what I needed was my heart and my lungs and my brain. I could even live without my intestines. I just needed to keep these parts of me warm. It was no action of my own. It was just my body's response. And as this heat came inside my core, I started to sweat and get hot, or felt like sweat to me. And so I unzipped my coat, which is what people with hypothermia do. They take off their clothes, and Tim got angry at me, and I was like, I don't care what you're thinking. I'm leaving my coat open. And then this accelerated the whole process. So I'm in this state of peace. I'm still pulling on the rope, and then sleep came like a dropped curtain on a darkened stage. Boom. And I would collapse without consciousness to the ledge on which I was standing and smack my shoulder and crack my head, but my head was helmeted to smack my head, and would awaken me. And I then stood up and pulled on the rope, and then would fall asleep in the same curtain drop, end of consciousness, and then wake up and stand and pull the rope again. And this happened a bunch of times. And then I stood up this one time, and as I stood up to pull on the rope again, my peripheral vision was gone. There was this big black circle around my vision that collapsed rapidly in a tunnel. And as I watched the light get narrower and narrower, I was confused, thinking, what is this? Am I falling asleep again? I don't understand why this is different. All these thoughts running through my mind. And as it went to black, I thought, I'm going asleep. And as it went to black, I was not asleep. I was awake. And I didn't understand why I was conscious when I could only see darkness. And where was all my pain? All my pain was gone. And what was going on? I was very confused. And as I looked toward where I thought the mountain should be, instead there was this huge expanse of this dark void that extended into infinity, or the length of a universe, all the way to a very far distant place. And it was all darkness. And then this pinprick of light appeared at the very edge of this universe distant edge of darkness, and it illuminated, and it rushed toward me faster than I could conceive. And as it rushed toward me, it filled my vision with light. And as it came to me, it communicated telepathically, non-linguistically, with a download of "I'm taking you," and showed me all its power and showed me all its intellect. And I put up all of my willpower against it to say to it, "You're not taking me. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not going anywhere." And as I had this thought, it was already on me and took me, as I didn't even finish thinking. And I was gone from wherever I had been in this space between my body and this void. And now I'm inside of this entity, and this entity is gigantic, and it is translucent and transparent, and I can see the structure to it, and I can see through it into this void, and I am contained inside of it, and I have a physical form, like a light body, a body of energy in the shape of Peter, but there's no connection, no silver cord connecting me to my physical body. I am separate from it, and I have no molecules. And these aren't even electrons. These aren't even photons. I don't know what they were, but they were not anything made of any sort of matter and or energy that I'd ever been familiar with. But it's still, I had consciousness in this shape, and I had no agency. I was a Raggedy Ann doll inside of this entity that was communicated directly to me all the time. As I was inside of it, the communication was comfort and beauty and welcome and power and intellect, and this superpositioning that I knew that this entity in which I was a limited form of the almighty infinite itself, themselves, that this was somehow the same quality of divine presence, but in a limited form. It was like superposition. It was in the divine self. It was the it was the divine self, but somehow it was in a limited form for me. And as I was inside of this and it was speaking only comfort, I had this relaxation and this acceptance. And then I had this exterior perspective. I was like an eyeball traveling side by side with this angelic orb as it reascended the elevator shaft that it had descended toward me. And I was this eyeball looking at this experience of myself inside this orb, and I had this outside point of view was not located in anything. I was only, I could see myself. And so I could see myself inside this entity, and I was inside this entity seeing out through it, but I couldn't from the inside see any location. And I looked to see where I was seeing myself.
Oh, wow.
And so I get carried up this back to this place of its entrance into this darkness, and it's all very fast and very far. And as we touch this edge of something, this angelic being unfolds or births me, or it becomes or pops me out. I'm suddenly inside of this greater darkness, and in this greater darkness there is an illumination, and I can see in every direction at once. And it's like I have 10,000 eyes, and I can see this darkness is illuminated up to this edge of infinity. And at this edge of infinity, I can't see beyond. There's darkness, but it's further than I could ever have seen before. And I have this immediate sense of timelessness, of this is my original self. This is my true self. This is who I've always been. I had this self-remembrance of finally me again. And I am this content, healed, whole being with no suffering. And my thinking is my being, is my seeing, is my feeling, and there is no brain in the way of my processing of where I am or who I am or what I'm seeing. It's all one thing and happens in this instant of the timelessness. So I'm in this body of heaven, this divine presence that is all there is around me, this fullness and this emptiness, this no thingness. There are no things here. This is a place of nothing. I am nothing. Everything in the world that has physicality everything has a thing. Everything has a name. Everything here in this world is a thing, even muons and quarks, but not there. There's none of those things. There's not even energy that I can be described, that I can tell you what it is. Everything I say is metaphor and simile, because there's no other language to describe this. So it's not like I can say that, oh, light is like the photon emitting from my desk lamp. Yes
Mm-hmm.
and no. It's 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 a so I'm this energetic form, and I am my own orb of conscious energy that is always and has been myself. And as I am in this void, this open illumination, this place of no thing, a door opens, and this door is gigantic. I am big. I'm 10,000 times bigger than my human body. And this door that's 10,000 times bigger than me opens, and only it's like a ripping open of the darkness, revealing the light itself that is contained in this one space. It's like this waterfall flowing down. It's this movement. It has this fluidity to it. And it's made up of every color that I'd seen of the stars of the night before, in this brilliant skyscape before the moon rose, of every color of every star that you've ever imagined or seen, filling in a density of this flow. But there's more than just the colors I saw. There's all of the this is symbol, this is metaphor. They're all the colors of the electromagnetic spectrum. And
Mm-hmm.
this, all the electromagnetic spectrum, and more so, all this light, all this light, all this light, and it's all these colors, and it's also pure white. So it's paradoxically both simultaneously, and it has a solid surface, and it is translucent, and it is transparent, and it's the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen ever. And I'm seduced by it. I want this, and I can see the surface and this flow, and it's fascinating, and I can see through it into this other tunnel. And so I move to it, and I touch it with my being, and as I touch it with my being, it opens me. I become open to it, and it flows inside me as I flow inside it. And as I'm inside of it, and it is inside of me, it surrounds me, and it speaks inside of me, and all these things happen at the same time. And I tell my story purposefully in a disorder. I don't always tell it the same way, because everything happens at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But they were distinct and individual things that happened, but they were all together. So I get infilled with this divine presence, and it is a living all life that there is. And it infills me. And as it infills me, I know that I am known by this knower with the capital K. I know that there's no parts of me that are hidden, that every part and aspect of my human life is completely visible, and that I am naked. I am naked. It's like being before the eye of Sauron in Tolkien, only in this case, the all seeing eye. There is no darkness in me that can hide from the light that is penetrating. And it's not evil or maleficent, it is powerful, powerful presence showing itself to me. I know you. I have always known you. I am creator. You are creature, not just in my human form, but creator of my higher self, of my soul self. And I see my human life. I see my soul self. I see the origin of my soul self. I hear in this voice that's soundless and speaking inside of me, the origin of my very nature of my higher consciousness, the origin of my consciousness, and I am being spoken into being, like a name, like a word that can't be said, beyond frequency of sound, beyond the world of idea, in this place of just pure creation. And I am constantly, always being created, and I'm being created in the presence of creator, and I'm paradoxically brand new, and it shows me the eons of my existence in this timeless space where I had lived many lives, and I had existed for eons and eons, and none of the individual lives that I experienced, that I was shown into two lives I requested, they were not me. Me was this consciousness overhanging all of it. I had this distinct experience of inhabiting these bodies as an alien form, living inside of them. And I saw the origin of myself, the very beginning of my beginning, where I was like a singular photon superpositioned with a 10 zillion septillion photons, like the energy field of the divine self was the same as me. But I was a very tiny, limited form of it, the same light. And I was so superpositioned. I was created from unlimitedness and made limited, but made of the same substance in its core. And as I saw that, I saw the length of my life as a consciousness and the lives I had lived in enfleshed. And I saw that none of them were me, and that what the divine was speaking to and speaking of and creating was my highest self. And simultaneous to all of this, my humanity, my life I lived as a human being seen was also shown to me. So I saw and went through all of the pain that I gave away in my entire life from the interior perspective of every single person in my life, that who I had ever hurt, from their point of view, living inside of them as they experienced it, as I caused them pain and suffering. I felt their emotions and their chemical rush of adrenaline, and I felt their anger and their jealousy and their hurt and their pain and their confusion and their wound. And I was them. I was them, feeling all the pain in this chronological life review of each person, one after the other, each incident one after the other. And this was also a superposition thing, because I was also myself, experiencing all of Peter, the human being, experiencing all of the reasons and emotions I had for causing them that pain, directing it at them on purpose. And all of my reasoning compared to all of the suffering that I caused was a massive imbalance. The amount of pain that I caused was 10,000 times greater than my tiny little reasons and emotions for causing it. And all of the pain that I caused attached to me. It was my pain. It was my burden that I gave to them. Turned out it was mine. And as I'm judging myself, I'm self-judging. I see myself in comparison to purity with a capital P, to unlimitedness with a capital U, and I see myself as limited and impure. And I see myself compared to love beyond imagination, and I see my brokenness, and I feel guilty because I am guilty for having caused so much pain. And I judge myself. And as I judge myself, I am shown all of humanity. I see all of the pain every human being causes every human being for the history of humanity. And I see this radical equality among us, that no one of us is greater or lesser than the other in comparison to the purity of the unlimited. Everything is less than. And as less than, we hurt each other. It's the nature of all the universe to consume itself. Black holes consuming star systems, bacteria consuming human beings. It's just the way it is. And there was this equality of our brokenness, which made me into see a new way of, well, I judged myself and all of us guilty in comparison to the unlimited love that was only speaking love to me. And as I listened to it, as I heard beyond my egoic self, as I listened not to the pain that I had caused or the self-judgment that I had given myself, as I listened to the purity itself through like a lens of love, this heart of my heart, where all the love I had given away in my life and all the love that had been given to me in my life belonged to me. And it was this counterpoint to all the pain that I had caused. And as I listened to the love that was being spoken to me through the love that I had experienced in my life, all of the chaff from my wheat was burned away. All of this, it was like a purgative fire of divine love. Like all the chains and A Christmas Carol. I forged these chains in my lifetime. All of those chains, they didn't just melt away in a vat being heated by the fires of hell, they vanished as if they never existed. They had dematerialized. And all of this healing came to me. Healing and wholeness like I cannot describe to you. It's not the end of like when you break a bone and finally the bone is healed. But years later, when the weather turns, you feel that bone. There was no feeling of the bone left. There were no bones left. There was no person left to suffer any pain. There was no pain, no suffering at all in all of eternity. There was only healing and welcome and love and well-being and bliss and paradise, understanding, knowledge. I wanted to understand the structure of the universe, how it was that there was this radical equality of human beings and all life and all the universe, and how the whole thing was structured. And in an instant, I knew all of this knowledge was downloaded into me of how the whole thing worked from top to bottom, and every galaxy and every molecule. And what I understood is my human capacity for understanding is similar. So I'm going to make an analogy. My human
Mm-hmm.
capacity for understanding compared to my soul's capacity for understanding is like an ant to a human.
Mm-hmm.
But my soul capacity to understanding of the divine was like infinity to a human being. I couldn't understand the complexity of it, but I could experience the knowledge of that it was. And this is how it was put together. But there was this level beyond which was just chaos to me, but wasn't chaos.
Yeah.
So as all of this is happening, I'm expanding in myself in this awe and adoration. I'm being infilled. It was like all of these chains that had wrapped up my soul. Once they were gone, I could expand even further to my higher nature, my highest nature, to this point where bliss and adoration, joy and truth, love and beauty, light and healing were all one thing. There was not separation. On earth, we separate truth from wisdom and wisdom from healing, but they are not. They are oneness. And in this oneness that infilled me, I expanded and expanded to this point at which there was very little of my human self was gone. I still had a consciousness and an identity as a consciousness. And I get to this point where at one more bit of this divine infilling of union, that my consciousness of my consciousness, the being conscious of that I was a separate being from the divine, that as that was going to be obliterated and I was going to be annihilated and I was going to fold back into the divine self. And it was at that point it retracted me. I deflated and I became like uh, 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 a, a separate being again from it, but with the knowledge of this wisdom of the infilling. And I said to it, am I dead? And the voice said to me, yes, you're dead. Welcome home. And I said, but I can't leave now. My parents are suffering. And I was swept across heaven in an instant to the edge of infinity, where our universe is being created. As I am being created in the presence of the divine right then and there, the universe has its existence. I can see it in this immediate moment of my presence in it. And my consciousness is somehow stuck outside this heaven that I am also in. I'm like 99% in heaven and 1% outside. And I'm being shown our universe, and I can see all of the galaxies, all of the galaxies and spaces between the galaxies of all of the universe, going back to the Big Bang, and or the origin of the breathing out of the divine self. The whole universe is being breathed into being as I am there, and it had an origin in time of its being breathed into being at the first. But this breathing into being is constant and it's unfolding. And as I look back in time and space to this beginning of our universe, I see this burst of all these universes, universe upon universe upon universe upon universe, all of them unfolding like a mini petaled flower, just unfolding and unfolding and unfolding. And beyond this, I can see and sense the divine self, and into which it lives, expressing itself from this place of darkness to me, infinity. But its expression is love, unfolding of itself, and all these universes, all of them made of love, 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 and weaving and woven through all of them. And as it's speaking these universes upon universes into existence, including ours. I have all of that love of all of these universes, the totality of all of the infinite love is then aimed at me like a laser beam. And I know that I am chosen. I am the prodigal child. I am the most beloved. I am as beloved as all the universes. And as I have this experience, it speaks to me. All is well and all has been well and all will be well because of this immensity of my love. And then it shows me all of Earth. All at once this is happening, and it shows me our galaxy and our solar system and our Earth, and I see all 7 billion people. And inside of every single one of them is the very same light that's inside of me, and this same laser beam of the chosen, of being the chosen beloved of the divine, is the same light I see inside of everyone. And so there's this paradox that everyone is this proverbial prodigal child of the divine who is the most beloved that has ever existed. And there's this equality of our being beloved, even though we have this equality of our being human. These two things are parallel. And inside of all of the souls and the hearts of all the human beings I could see, there's this golden light that is living inside of them. And it's the same living light that I see inside the love that was woven through this universe and all these universes. And it's like this brilliant, shinier than the star that I can see, that around which our planet orbits. Inside of every single person is like this star of golden light. And everybody is living their life doing whatever they're doing, murderers and war and love making and babies and ships at sea. And I can see all of this all at once, and nobody can see it inside the other. It's all covered by this dense foam that covers the whole planet. And everybody's blind to this divine light that is the same inside of everything that's living. And I see this inside of them. And the voice says to me, nothing is lost. No one is lost. I am all there is. I am the love woven inside of everything. Everyone is my beloved. Everything is my beloved. And as I watch this, I see my parents' faces appear. And I see all the collection of the suffering that they've endured for their whole lifetime and their expression. I see into the depth of their living beings. And simultaneous, I see these two parallel lives illuminate behind them. I see the track to these two tracks of their living. I see the track of their living without me. And I see this massive accumulation and brokenness. I see their lives. I see the lives they will live without me, with me being dead. And then I see their lives that they would live with me being alive. And I see this differentiation between the amount of suffering, but I see their deaths. And in their deaths, neither of those amounts of suffering change their deaths. In their deaths, they become like me. There is this freeing from their journey and their suffering. They are well and whole and healed and unburdened and made of light and love, just like me. And the voice shows me that the length of my human life, of all my incarnations, is the wink of an eye, the snap of a finger, compared to this infinity in which I exist. And so in a moment, if I wait, they'll be here and all is well with them. But I still see their temporal selves. I can still see the Earth time. I'm like looking at Earth in real time. I see these things not like in the past or in the future. I'm seeing it as it is in the moment of my own death. And I see my parents suffering in that life space. And I say, the length of my life is the wink of an eye. So can I come back here if I go back there? And the voice says, yes, you have the choice. It's up to you. But it's your time. Welcome home. Welcome, but you have the choice. And I say, I can come back to this bliss. And the voice says, yes, you come back to this bliss. And I say, well, then I choose to live my life. And the voice says, you won't live your life, and throws me out. And I am enveloped again with the divine angel, but now this angel is more of the divine presence of all of heaven. in escorting me and carrying me out and condensing me inside itself. And as I'm being carried out, I become more corporeal. As we travel the further away, I get back my light body. And as I'm being reconstructed, there are 10 million doors in front of me, and they're all lined up in this concentric circle, like door after door after door, expanding to the edge of my vision. And in the center of all of these doors is this ginormous white beam of light, and I know that it is the light of the divine itself pouring out. And it tells me to choose. This light, it is most brilliant as among the closer doors and fades to darkness at the outermost edge. But there's an immense amount of light, but in all of these doorways, but none as pure and as strong as the center doorway, which is the light itself. And it tells me choose, and it tells me choose the light. And I think I want myself, and I want light. I want myself, though I want some autonomy, and I choose both. And the choice is made. And as I make this choice, I am inside another tunnel. And this tunnel I know leads to my body. And I see all these potentialities of all of the choices that I would make, leading to the directionality and the fate of my life. And all the doorways, there are doorways in the tunnel connecting it to all these other doorway tunnels that I could have chosen. And yet there's also light inside here, but I am being carried down, and I have no choice in this. And now I've made my choice. And now suddenly I emerge at the end, and I'm outside of my body, and I can see my body in front of me, and I can see and sense and feel myself being like these huge hands crushing me down into the smaller and smaller and smaller form, like a compactor. And then I watch my chest be opened, and I see me being stuck inside, and I felt like I was being screwed into this physical body. And now I'm inside this body, and I can still see a peak outside, and then my body is sealed, and I am blind, and I am inside this entity that I don't know what this is or where I am. But as I feel my brain wire up, like charge comes into it, and it comes back online, kind of whirring back into consciousness. And as it comes back to consciousness, I am filled with pain, like not just the physical pain of the pain of my feet and my hands and the fire and the frostbite, but the pain of being in material form. I am now contained and confined and crushed back into a crudeness that became a burden for me. And as my brain comes back online, my ears awaken, and I can hear sound, and the sound begins to form into words for me. And I hear, don't die, don't die, don't die, and this screaming and this yelling. And I open my eyes, and there's Tim leaning over me, reaching down to me, shaking me. And he's screaming, and he sees my eyes open, and he says, oh my, you were dead. I thought you were dead. You were dead. I thought you were dead. And he's crying, and he's pulling me up, and I stand up, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know who he is. I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am. I don't understand what had just happened to me. I know that I'm not myself anymore. I'm in this container, and I don't understand it. And as he's talking to me, I finally begin to, oh yeah, my name is Peter. I'm on this cliff. I have frostbite. I'm dying. This is hypothermic. This is where I am. All this brain thing comes back online again. And eventually he gets me to pull the rope, and the rope comes free in the first pull, and I descend with second to Tim. Tim descends first. I come down second, and we self-treat for hypothermia in his Arctic tent with a chimney and a vent so that we could fire up the stoves inside without asphyxiating ourselves. We climb into our sleeping bags. We heat up our stoves. We slowly warm water. We start with cold water, and we work our way up to warm food and hot water until our body cores begin to stabilize, and then we get in the car and fire up the heater sometime around dawn. And that's it.
That's your condensed version, is it?
Yes. The quick talking Bostonian.
Okay. Wow. Okay, well, let me come back into my room, because the rhythm of your voice, I started to, I won't say drift, but I was, immersed in your voice. So here I am, I'm back. So thank you for the telling, Peter. And really, what a monumental mystical experience. And I think that your eloquent description will enable the listener to envision your personal journey. So I thank you for that. Yeah, that was a great telling of. All right, Peter, I'm going to let you go. And nicer to end this way than to be just cut off in mid-sentence.
Yeah, and Kelly Joe, I mentioned earlier on that you have a nice voice, and I I I really mean that. There's a warmth to your voice that is like I don't know, radio. You have a radio voice, but not a radio voice of the Monday
Hey
morning
there, hi
drive,
there, ho
right?
there.
Not that guy. But there's a warmth in your voice that you can't fake.
Oh, I really do. And I know people say I really appreciate that, but I really do appreciate that. All right, Peter, I will let you get on with your day. And again, thanks for sticking around.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show. I knew that this was going to be great from the moment we first talked.
Okay. All right. Well, take good care.
Peace to you.
I hope you return to listen to the continued conversation with Peter in part 2. We muse over who we think just might be the most famous NDEer, plus mystical messages from the other side, and medical mystics in the making, and much more. I would like to keep this cast a commercial-free zone. In light of that, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channels. All my orb videos are available by using the handle @Spirit Orbs Sightings, or visit my new channel with the handle @Orbicle Times Podcast. If you've already subscribed, many thanks. For blogs, episodes, show notes, bios, images, and video, please visit www.orbicletimes.com. If you enjoyed an episode, then please give a like or a share on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, or whatever podcatcher you happen to use. If you've already done so, much appreciated. Thank you for taking your time to visit these Orbicle Times. Orbicle Times Podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kelly Joe, at Studio Spare Room.